Michelle, thank you for joining me on the Finite podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited about our discussion today.
Me too. We're delving into what you have kind of TM'd designed intelligence, which sounds like a really exciting topic. Before we do, I would love to hear a little bit more about your exciting career, your CMO at Sitecore. How did you get here? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Look, I am happy to give you a bit of my background, but I will tell you that I have been in marketing longer than I sometimes want to admit. So I'm gonna shorten it for the for the purposes of this conversation. What I think is really the most interesting about my background is that I actually didn't start in some kind of glamorous strategy marketing role. I actually began my career as an administrative assistant at a promotional agency. And this was at a time when not everybody had their own personal computer. So I actually spent my time typing up creative briefs from all of the account executives and creative directors. And while tedious and laborious, it was actually a great way to learn the business because it taught me the craft from the ground up. And then I ended up moving into product marketing at a tech firm. And I really fell in love with this challenge of translating very complex ideas into something that anybody could understand and use. And from there, I built my career and I've worked for all different size companies, right? So startups, mid-size firms to IBM. And, at IBM, you learn what it means to operate at a global scale. And then you're right, at Sitecore, I've joined as the chief marketing officer. But there's a common thread, I think, across all of these jobs, whether, I was marketing weather data or artificial intelligence or learning management or digital experience. That common thread has been the intersection of technology and humanity. And I really love helping people understand the promise of tech and how it actually can make life better for people. If I look at sort of the secret sauce of my career, and I always like to insert this into conversations I have, I will tell you that I have been so fortunate to have remarkable female leaders who invested in me long before I believed I belonged in the room. And I truly carry that with me. And mentoring this next generation of marketers, whatever marketing looks like, is probably one of my favorite things to do. And my best mentor gig right now, Jody, is sitting upstairs. My daughter, who is 22, has chosen to step into the field of marketing. She's a content marketer, social media marketer, and like watching her find her voice is probably the most magical and rewarding thing ever. That's a bit about me.
So inspiring. And I love that you mention mentorship, especially for women. Amazing, amazing stuff. I'm assuming we're going to be discussing a lot about this kind of interwoven mutual dependency between tech outputs and impact on businesses, impact on humanity, impact on society, science, etc., and really making it kind of relevant for the end users. But to kind of start us off and frame the conversation, I'd love to get your definition of your term designed intelligence and what that means to you, where it came from, and
It's such a great question, and I love discussing this topic because I actually think that it gets to the heart of how the marketing industry is changing and how technology is evolving. And before we dive deep into this sort of concept of designed intelligence, I think it's important to acknowledge this moment that we're in. AI isn't new, right? I mean, like we've been using some form of AI in marketing for decades. But I think what is really new is the accessibility that's come with generative AI. Like just in the past few years, like now you can express intent in plain language and the system responds. You don't have to be a developer. You don't have to be a data scientist. Anyone can engage with it. It's really been democratized. But I think that the real shift isn't just in the technology in generative AI itself. It's in the what we call behavioral seepage that followed, right? So like in our everyday lives, we started to use AI to help us plan trips, to draft our emails, to make decisions, to get whatever answers we're looking for. And I think when something like that becomes so effortless in your personal life, it inevitably follows you into your work life. And so now marketers aren't just experimenting with AI, we're relying on it. And AI has stopped feeling like a tool and it started functioning more like a teammate that we can hand tasks off to. And when that happens, like fundamentally, the way that you market, it changes. And I think this is why we need a more intentional and thoughtful model for how humans and AI work together. So when I talk about designed intelligence, what I'm really talking about is the intentional choreography between human creativity and AI capability. So it's not about just bolting on a new tool into your tech stack. It really is about um, thinking about your workforce in a way where people and AI work together every single day. And it's become just part of the fabric. When I think about the way that we've thought about AI in the past, I think it tempts us to chase things like speed and cost efficiencies, right? Because that's, I think, what people are looking for out of AI. When you look at what marketing's really good at, our superpower is connection. We bring imagination and empathy and storytelling to the fore for our companies. And in a designed intelligence models, we as people still set the strategy, we write the story, we kind of set the standards. But AI plays a role too. It unifies the data, it generates and adapts content, it makes fast decisions in the moment, and then a human comes back in and is there to review for nuance and brand integrity and all of those things. So it truly is a choreography. And I think that's this so incredibly valuable in a time when marketing is operating so quickly. I think it's a great concept, and I think it's something that we all have to embrace and adopt as we go forward.
Absolutely. We've had all kinds of conversations about use whether with I've had one guest who came on and said he'd, restructured his team very
Yeah.
heavily to make the way for AI agents. And then other teams who have, just kind of enabled their team with tone of voice software and kind of more enablement pieces. What's your perspective on humans working with AI in terms of organizational team structure, and how should CMOs go about making way for AI and looking for opportunities to use AI from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. And I think at a macro level, so like if you take a step back, it's human, AI, human. So you got to think about it sort of as this three-part choreography. Humans have to lead. And I believe that fundamentally marketing defines an audience. We set the narrative. We instill a set of guardrails, what we want to say, what we will never say, what's on brand, and what that actually means. And that clarity is essential because AI is only as strong as the intention we set. It's like a new team member. You have to give it guidance and guardrails for that team member to be successful. So humans lead, then AI accelerates. And I think this is where the shift is really happening away from just AI being this kind of tool. And I'll give you an example. So imagine that you're kicking off a campaign and you're watching the market and a topic is trending, or you have a competitor that's making a move, or a new customer need use case emerges, and there's like this opportunity to respond. And traditionally, that would trigger some kind of scramble around creating a campaign, and you'd have to sort of think through it all. But with AI built into that same environment, and when you've got your content, your data, and your brand standards, that moment is actually something that becomes the spark. AI drafts a brief, AI surfaces the right assets, it generates message variations, it adapts them for all of the various channels, email, web, social, etc., all within the boundaries that the marketing team has set. And because it understands context, you've given it context, everything starts aligned, everything is connected, and now you can move quickly. Humans lead, AI accelerates, and now you come back for human review, always human in the loop. And marketers can look at what the AI has produced. They can make decisions about what actually gets into market, refining the language, checking for nuance. And that's kind of how I think the choreography works in a marketing organization. It's interesting because we've got, Jody, some research that we're gonna be launching, I think it's next week, and it really shows kind of how this or why this choreography matters because 89% of the leaders that we surveyed believe that AI will be essential for real-time multi-channel engagement, and 90% of them expect to dramatically accelerate campaign execution and be able to scale personalization. But that only works if your operating model allows for you to scale in a way that humans alone cannot. It's so human-led, but AI is context aware, and I think that's super important. But I also think that this leads to shifts in how your marketing organization is set up and what people actually do, what roles they play.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. That was a question that popped up when you were explaining is, are you hiring people with these kind of strategy and revisal roles in mind? And is kind of of AI a top kind of non-negotiable characteristic in your job descriptions? And, how are you kind of reframing the jobs within your marketing organization to respond to designed intelligence?
I love that. I would say I'm gonna make a statement here. AI is not required. What is required is curiosity. And so I think some of the sort of softer or power skills like critical thinking, problem solving, curiosity, those are the things that I hire for because I can train people how to work in a model. I can teach them how to utilize the capabilities that AI brings. But what I will tell you about the workforce, if we're going to have AI in the workforce, if we're truly going to create a designed intelligence model, we have to stop treating it like a side hustle and start treating AI like a new set of teammates. And we've got to recognize that when the workforce changes, our org charts have to change with them. And so you'll still have, I think, some of, I think, some of the traditional roles, like you're still gonna have product marketing, you're still gonna have creatives, you'll have campaign teams, you'll have marketing operations. I don't think that work will go away. I think it'll evolve, but I don't think it'll go away. But as AI enters the workflow, you're gonna see new roles appear. We already are, right? Prompt engineers who are helping to translate human intent into instructions that the model can take, journey designers, brand guardians, the people who are ensuring that the AI outputs stay accurate, on brand, ethical. And so I think as AI starts to maybe handle more of the day-to-day, the way teams are structured will change because now you're operating in a real-time engagement model. And if that's the case, you can't be operating in channel silos anymore. You cannot have AI orchestrating experience across all of these channels if your teams, if the humans are still working in disconnected silos. And so the org chart has to evolve to reflect how work is now happening. And our marketing team at Sitecore is a perfect example. We are evolving into an agile squad model so that we can work faster, so that we can be more fluid, and each of our squads will have a set of AI teammates.
That's really interesting. Yeah, sometimes I think the amount that AI frees up in the day to day and kind of leaves room for this strategy and this revision, how much output you can actually achieve. And so many of the existing kind of organization structures would be a blocker for that kind of level of mass output and mass kind of personalization and how much visibility you can actually gain over even more pain. So actually, now that I mentioned personalization, I did notice in your description of designed intelligence that you wanted marketing to not just be personalized, but be permissioned. And I wanted to understand what you mean by that, and if you have any examples to kind of elucidate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to go to your LinkedIn feed to know that we are living in the midst of a trust recession. I think people are more aware. I think people feel more empowered, but I think, frankly, we're far more skeptical than ever because what we are seeing is just so much synthetic media pumped into the market. And I think that personalization by itself isn't enough anymore. I think we have to move into permissioned. So personalization says, hey, we know a lot about you. Permission says, you know what we know, You know why we know it and how we're using it. And oh, by the way, you're comfortable with it. And in an AI world where content is being generated at an industrial scale, I mean, it's crazy to think about the scale that we've now achieved. There's another dimension that I think is becoming so much more critical, which is authenticity. Because when you've got machines helping to generate more of the content, I think it's pretty easy for brands to start to sound interchangeable. We already see the AI isms popping through in all different places from all different brands. I think permissioned marketing protects authenticity because it forces you to be clear about who you are, what you stand for, how you're using someone's data to speak with them, not at them, and how you are using AI. And when you do that, your brand keeps its human voice instead of sort of disappearing in this sea of genetic AI copy or generic AI copy. Look, I think trust and authenticity are those words that we are going to see over and over and over again because people are going to call to question things that feel inauthentic or fake. I think people are looking for experiences that help them build trust. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing a lot of experiences that erode trust. We in the report that I mentioned that's coming out, we talk about trust as perhaps the most powerful currency of any organization. And when you lead with that transparency about how you're using data, about how you're using AI, when you are authentic in your approach, I think you do engender that deeper loyalty. And so when a brand is really honest about what it's doing and how it's doing it, it doesn't just personalize better. I think you show up in a way that people can really trust and they value that. I do.
Me too. Absolutely. But it's interesting though, because I don't know if you've seen on your feed, but you'll see like a very obviously AI video. I saw a beaver lugging a tree across a road the other day. The comments, some of the top comments were, I don't care that this is AI, this is fun. Or like, I don't care that this is AI, this is interesting. But I think as B2B technology marketers, who the finite listeners all are, we almost have, we're not speaking to that audience. We're not in the same league as that kind of content, and we have a responsibility to show up authentically and maintain high levels of trust due to,
I agree.
you know, work, B2B, the B2B world, high value deals and large stakeholder groups and important stakes, really. So yeah, it's really interesting to see these two kind of areas pop up, and I think we need to be really careful to delineate that. Even
Yes.
yeah,
I agree with you. Look, people still do business with people, right? There is something to building relationships. And I think when you break that trust, you can actually sour the relationship. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't.
yeah, absolutely. And also consumers, they are changing the way that they see data privacy themselves. I can't believe it's even taken this long. We had
Right.
what, GDPR, I don't know, 10 years ago. Um, and now only just kind of Threads, Meta is giving users the option to kind of tell the algorithm what they want to see. You know, it's weird how kind of consumers are catching up to the regulatory kind of practices that have been put in place. So I totally agree. Is there any kind of other stats or things you wanted to highlight from your report on trust? Because I think this is a really interesting area.
Yeah, look, I think that in the research that we're going to launch, we asked a lot of questions about trust, and what we found was that people value when the brands they engage with design for empathy, when they design for inclusion and accessibility. You do see things like higher conversions, you see better search visibility, you see stronger brand trust, and especially things like accessibility. It increases the trust that we have. I believe that empathy scales when you're delivering an experience that is easier for the individual that you're talking with when it is clearer about what you are trying to do, when you've got this mutual understanding of the relationship that you want to have, and when you are being inclusive, I have this amazing example of empathy that I think is really powerful because what it does is it's a perfect example of designed intelligence, where humans are designing the experience and utilizing AI capabilities to actually bring it to life. And we have a customer that was on stage with us at Sitecore Symposium it was earlier this year, and the company's WellSpan Health, and they have a very human-centered design philosophy but also a strong digital foundation on Sitecore. And they've introduced agentic AI as part of their workforce. They have an AI assistant named Anna, and Anna has handled more than 1 million patient interactions, and satisfaction scores are through the roof. They're close to nine, I think they're like 9 out of 10, because Anna actually helps people navigate deeply emotional health decisions with the patients and the availability that a human team alone could never provide. I mean, think about your experience with a healthcare provider. It can be challenging. And to me, that is the perfect example of designed intelligence in action. Human designs the experience, AI scales it, and people feel really supported without feeling that sort of creepy factor that sometimes technology makes people sort of feel.
Absolutely. That's actually a really interesting example because you wouldn't necessarily think that AI was empathetic. I mean,
That's
it
right.
says things like, haha, I'm laughing, or like, I was thinking the other day and I was like, are you human? And we all know that there's this separation, and feels kind of uncanny valley when they say that, but it's because they are built on pure, raw human experience, not just ones and zeros, but like thousands of Reddit threads of people pouring their heart out. AI is built upon all of this, so what's to say it can't scale it and really kind of make audiences feel that kind of connection and empathy.
Look, I agree, and I get why people don't put AI and empathy in the same sentence. I mean, even the other day, I was utilizing ChatGPT for something, and I'm like, "No, no, no, this isn't working. I want you to read it. I want you to really read what you wrote, and I want you to come back, and I want you to tell me what's wrong with it." It's ChatGPT said, "I read it aloud twice." I'm like, "No, you didn't." But, like, I totally get it, but I do believe that when AI is designed well, when you give it the right context, it can actually amplify empathy. I think the WellSpan example is a perfect one because empathy in marketing is about understanding someone's situation, sensing tone, sensing emotion, responding in a way that feels respectful and relevant to the situation. And I do think AI helps with that because it can listen at a scale that humans can. It can listen for signals across channels. It understands sentiment. It can suggest responses that I think reflect the need in that moment. And then people bring the emotional intelligence because now we can take that, we could shape the tone, we can shape the message, we can craft something that makes the response feel truly human. And again, I think that when organizations design for empathy, even using AI, you're going to see really impactful human outcomes.
I totally get that. I can see how that impacts your marketing organization now, your audience insights, your customer experience. Designed intelligence really is just kind of all over. It is a philosophy. Absolutely. So I want to talk about, I always like to ask about kind of future predictions, what we think is coming up. I think I'm worried that right now humans have all of this energy and empathy and intelligence and kind of unique stories, but I don't know, if we keep on collaborating with AI, will we just cannibalize each other, and how how limited will we be in our thought processes and patterns if we're kind of relying on AI so heavily? That's just what I'm thinking about at the moment, my zeitgeist. But I wondered what you kind of saw predict happening in the next kind of 3 to 5 years. and how AI and marketers or audiences or customers will play out, especially with this designed intelligence model in mind? Will it evolve? How will it evolve?
The answer is yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's really it's almost in my opinion, it's almost really impossible to think 3 to 5 years out because the rate and pace of change is so dramatic. And Google Gemini, um, launching generative UI where it is actually building for you what you wanna see and the way you wanna see it. I think that, things are happening so quickly, it's almost impossible to predict. What I will say and what I can speak to, I think, is really what's happening in the marketing organization, and I think the most profound change that we will see is not like any one team or function, this kind of thing isn't gonna go away. But I actually think that marketing as a fundamental function is gonna change everything about it. I think we move from being campaign engine to actually what we've promised for so many years, a real-time experience engine. Because again, we now have the technology that can scale in a way that I don't think humans alone could. And so you'll start to see just sort of lines blur between various teams or functions, so brand and demand and customer experience, because you're going to have these orchestrated journey teams that comprise marketers and AI working from a shared and real-time view of the customer. And AI is constantly going to be listening for signals and then proposing the next best action or experience. And I think this orchestration is going to be the biggest and most profound thing that will happen to marketing, and AI will play a major role in it. And again, that means that our jobs as marketers change, right? We're not going to be building out manually every asset. We're not going to be designing every workflow. Instead, I think we are the editors in chief. We are the conductors of this orchestra. Like, we set the narrative, we define the guardrails, we decide what goes live, and AI becomes our partner in all of this, handling the volume and the velocity. And it's not optional. Like, this is an imperative, especially as we see that behavioral seepage from what's happening in the consumer space. Where goes consumer, so goes B2B. And I think that companies that will thrive will treat AI as an embedded, governed, but embedded part of the workforce and not just sort of a bolted on tool. And that's the future of designed intelligence. That's what designed intelligence is.
And that links back to when you're kind of choosing who to have on your team, and maybe some advice for listeners is those characteristics of curiosity and flexibility and those core characteristics are really super important to uphold.
Percent. Think in a world where we don't know where the technology is going, we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible and open to a world in which our jobs will change fundamentally. And the best way to do that is to be curious and to utilize the things that humans are innately great at, which is empathy, problem solving, critical thinking. Like, let's keep those things and being able to set the right intentions. Let's keep those things human, and let's let AI do what it's incredibly good at.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. That's all we have time for, but we've covered a lot. Understanding and breaking down this kind of big ideology like that is no small task. So thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.